Portland has been charging the federal government $500 every 15 minutes that this protective fence around the federal courthouse is up, which makes zero sense to me. But let's read this article because there's a lot in this that I can stop and say, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. And I'm going to try to do it in as calmly a manner as possible. I've been told I need to chill out a little bit. So we're going to chill. Portland, from NBC News, by the way. Portland says federal government owes nearly $200,000 over courthouse fence. The city is assessing the federal government $500 for every 15 minutes that the fence remains in place. First, I would question whether that is a normal charge that they charge everybody or if they're just charging the federal government more just because it's the federal government. I would think they're charging the federal government more just because it's the federal government. But let's read this. Officials in Portland, Oregon said that the federal government owes the city nearly $200,000 over a federal courthouse fence that's become the scene of nightly protests. Yes, but not due to the fault of the federal government. In fact, the federal government has said, hey, if you want federal agents to leave, quit attacking the courthouse and they'll leave. The only reason they're there is to defend the courthouse. If you would leave the courthouse alone, there wouldn't be federal agents there. The City Bureau of Transportation filed a cease and desist order over the fence, which obstructs a downtown street and is assessing the federal government $500 for every 15 minutes that it remains in place, Portland Commissioner Chloe Udele said Tuesday. So they want the feds to remove a fence that is the only main barrier between them and 1,000+ angry protesters who have been throwing dangerous weapons their way. That sounds odd to me, Portland. It sounds like you are trying to remove an obstruction to give the violent protesters free access to the federal agents inside the courthouse. As of yesterday, the federal government owes us $192,000 and counting, Udele said. We intend to collect. Okay. If I were the federal government, I would say, okay, I'm going to charge you $1,000 for every 15 minutes that your officers did nothing to stop the protesters attacking the courthouse. Typically, we would send a maintenance crew or contractor to remove such an obstruction, but I will not send workers into harm's way, she added. Oh, you won't, will you? You will not send workers into harm's way, but you'll remove the fence. That way federal employees protecting a courthouse, they don't want to be there. They would rather leave, but they're federal employees protecting a federal courthouse, and you want to remove the only barrier between them and the violent protesters. Okay. The Department of Homeland Security, which deployed federal agents to the city earlier this month to defend the Mark O. Hatfield U.S. courthouse amid protests following the police custody death of George Floyd, did not immediately respond to a request for comment Tuesday. Udele referred to the agents as an occupying force. Now, I'm a little confused with that. How are they an occupying force? They are federal agents on federal-owned land. It is a federal courthouse. They are protecting a federal courthouse. They're occupying what? Their own space? They're occupying their own courthouse? They have already said twice, if you don't want the federal officers there, then quit attacking the courthouse. If you would leave the courthouse, the feds have already said, if you would leave the courthouse alone, we wouldn't have federal agents there. They are there to protect the courthouse. And again, I can't stress it enough. They are federal agents who are within federal property. That's like someone saying that you are not allowed to defend your own property. That's just not how it should be. The move comes on the same day that Attorney General William Barr defended the Trump administration's decision to dispatch the agents. I would too. You cannot have a nation that is split and divided like that, where individuals are saying that the federal government cannot defend federal land and federal property. They have every right to be there. It's federal land. It's owned by the federal government. They are simply there defending federal property. What are they occupying? Their own space? Their own land? Their own property? And you are trying to use money and financial means to force them to remove a protective barrier. These agents have said already they genuinely are in fear for their lives. What is going on? We cannot have this kind of division. And it seems like I just, every time I turn around, they are trying to hamstring everything and frame a narrative. Recent protests against racial injustice and police violence following Floyd's May 25th killings were hijacked by violent rioters and anarchists, Barr said. Yes, they were. Yes, there are some peaceful protesters in this whole debacle. But there are a lot of individuals who are using this for their own means and using the protesters as a smokescreen. The administration is trying to protect federal functions and federal buildings, he said. And yes, the federal government has every right to defend federal functions and federal buildings. Just as everybody else has a right to, so do they. And all they're doing is staying in the courthouse, sallying out to push protesters back so they can repair the fence for their own protection, and going back in the courthouse. It's the protesters that keep repeatedly coming back in the thousands surrounding the courthouse, throwing firebombs at it, commercial-grade fireworks, and things of that nature. What part of any of that makes sense? You have a building that is immovable, that is owned by a certain entity. The certain entity has people of that entity protecting that building. What are they occupying? Their own space? What are they protecting? Well, their own space. Nobody can deny that. It's a federal courthouse, and it's federal agents protecting a federal courthouse. So can anybody explain to me what part of this makes sense? That the protesters keep attacking the courthouse, but then keep saying that they're the ones being attacked. Well, quit attacking the courthouse. I think if you stopped attacking the courthouse, the federal agents inside the courthouse would stop attacking you, because you're literally attacking them. So they're defending themselves. I mean, I don't understand what is so hard about that. Anyways, I hope that this was in more of a calm manner that is more acceptable for individuals that didn't appreciate the other ways. I have not cussed once in this video. I have not raised my voice once in this video, and I hope you appreciate that. I love you guys. You stay informed, and I will see you on the next one.